Well, thank you very much, David, for those excellent opening remarks on this afternoon's stream on simplifying zero trust in a cloud environment. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Great to see so many people here. Wonderful to have those in-person live events back again. As you can see, my name is Andy O'Gorman. I'm from Limerick, where our EMEA headquarters is located. And delighted to be in Dublin, especially after the result in the rugby on Saturday. So that's been a big bonus for us. I'm going to talk to you over the next 10 or 15 minutes on implementing a zero trust strategy for file sharing, which is functionality that's really at the core of the FileCloud solution itself. Okay. There we go. So let's start off by going way back into the mists of time when a little recap on the traditional approach before the concept of zero trust was widely accepted. So that traditional approach really was network security, trust but verify. And that traditional cybersecurity relies on the concept of the network perimeter. So that being the area around a protected network environment, often defined by containment technologies like firewalls. And users inside that network were deemed safe, while users outside the network were viewed as security risks, as it is transmitting data outside of the network too, of course. So that perimeter-based security does impede collaboration in some ways. So, modern collaboration involves internal employees, of course, but also your vendors, your contractors, your external consultants, subject matter experts, etc., auditors, regulatory reviewers, clients and customers. And that network perimeter model assumes that only internal users will need access to files or data secured within the network. So really only the first group would typically, those internal employees would be included as, as a network user. So that, as we said, perimeter-based security approach has kind of impeded collaboration somewhat, and that's something that pretty much every business and organization needs in order to thrive and survive in today's very hyper-connected world. So we're going to move on now to the next slide, which is, this impediment to collaboration kind of then forced users who needed to share files externally to come up with some way of negotiating around that network boundary. So you see some examples there when files need to be shared with vendors, contractors, external collaborators, etc. What employees might have done in the past is maybe download and attach to an email, send via FTP, download to USB and relay, upload to cloud and share, etc. So various examples there. But of course, the end result of that is that data is being exfiltrated outside the network, and leaving behind those built-in network defenses and possibly engaging with third-party unsecured software. So then this kind of brought us to a bit of an inflection point, I suppose, modern work and old problems. And suddenly work was no longer just an internal network-only process. Every file share or collaboration tool introduced to the network infrastructure represents another hole being punched through that perimeter. And more holes equals more opportunities for threat actors. So the concept of the internal network being safe was probably always a bit fallible, really. Collaboration and file sharing processes have only highlighted those issues, and major breaches have illustrated worst case scenarios even further. So something had to change, I guess, in truth, that internal network being safe was probably a fallible concept in the first place. So what happened then really was, while file sharing and content collaboration were certainly not the only protagonists, and you can see other contributing factors here like cloud and SaaS technology, remote work, bring your own device policies, distributed work environments, and the Internet of Things, etc. So, all of those basically led to other active threats, end results, things like ransomware as a service, insider threats, nation-state cyber attacks and breaches that exploited weak passwords and credentials, gaps between applications, application authentication and code changes, etc. So overall the end result of all of this was an erosion of that network perimeter. Okay, so now we're kind of going to get to the meat on the bones of this particular presentation, and the arrival of that new kid on the block in Zero Trust, which is defined as the term for an evolving set of cybersecurity paradigms that move defenses from static network-based perimeters to focus on users, assets, and resources. Now, apologies, the references at the bottom of that slide are very difficult to read, but it is taken from NIST, the US Government National Institute for Standards and Technology, a special publication that came out called Zero Trust Architecture that came out in August of 2020. And in that same document, it goes on to talk about how Zero Trust focuses on protecting resources, those being assets, services, workflows, network accounts, etc., not network segments, as the network location is no longer seen as the prime component to the security posture of the resource. And then a couple of years later, the NSA, the National Security Agency in the US, published a cybersecurity information sheet entitled Advancing Zero Trust Maturity Throughout the User Pillar. And those gave us these zero trust tenets. So the first one there being assume a hostile environment, never trust, always verify, apply a unified analytics, presume a breach, and scrutinize explicitly. So I guess in layman terms, really what this document represents is kind of applying a certain level of paranoia that you might find at one of the top spy agencies in the world to your organization's cybersecurity posture. And this is what the foundations of such an approach would look like when translated into the concept of cybersecurity. Firstly, you need to secure data at rest and beyond. And Zero Trust is not just about securing data at rest. It's about securing data regardless of location within and beyond the network. And with proper implementation, Zero Trust will provide a more resilient security posture that supports file sharing and collaboration. So authentication, first of all, ensuring that the person is who they say they are. Authorization, ensuring that the person has the right permissions to do what they want to do. And re-verification, ensuring access is just enough and just in time. So there's really no more blanket, permanent permissions anymore. You're talking about giving just enough authentication and verification and just in time for the particular requirements of the user. And as you can see then, the benefits are quite significant. You can strengthen your IT infrastructure security posture. You can embrace cloud workload technology and work from anywhere policies. You can reduce that attack surface and minimize the data exposure and exfiltration. You can mitigate damage from insider threats and external attacks. And you can ease the pain points associated with file sharing and collaboration. So how does one go about creating a zero trust infrastructure that supports seamless and secure file sharing and collaboration? Going back to that NSA document on advancing zero trust maturity throughout the user pillar, we find these 7 pillars of zero trust. And they are obviously, first of all, the user, continually authenticating and verifying, etc. Devices, understanding the health and the status of devices, applications and workloads, the date, the network and the environment, authentication and orchestration, and visibility and analytics. So those are identified as the 7 pillars of zero trust from that cybersecurity information sheet. So So the best file sharing and content collaboration platform to enable zero trust, therefore, is one that addresses all of those pillars. I suppose if I had to pick one off the top of my head, FileCloud might be it. So this is what we do. FileCloud is a hyper-secure, enterprise-grade file sharing solution. Zero trust is built in to secure assets within and beyond the perimeter. Compliance support and automation capabilities for CISOs and CIOs. There's deployment options, so you can have a fully managed, fully hosted version, managed and hosted by FileCloud, or you can self-host on your legacy file servers, your cloud storage objects, whatever it might be. And data governance for admins, of course, and collaboration and ease of access for end users. And really, the essence of what FileCloud does is take that IT security perimeter that customers have made heavy investments of time and money in, and we take that perimeter and we extend it to encompass that external user. So we reduce the risk and attack vectors associated with public cloud and multi-tenant enterprise file sharing architectures. And we give you that private cloud for your own file sharing that you can invite those external users into with full granular control over their access and their permissions. And essentially, rather than exfiltrating your data outside the network, you can simply invite those external users in for file sharing and collaboration in complete security and also with complete control over data residency, as it's also up to you where your files are actually located. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, everybody.